page 90. They had
Okay.
we left off like, or at least because I would know considering I was the kind of the rate limiter there, but they had just gotten to the inn where
That's right.
their hostess had not yet started telling her story. And actually, we didn't know any of the characters at the end yet, but
that is true. Yeah.
But all that happened is that we got there. So,
that is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say even 2.5 weeks removed from reading it, I would definitely say that this is on my Mount Rushmore of books I've read. It was so good. Yes, it was so good.
Adam, where are you at? Last time we rated it at the beginning, I believe. Or at the end.
Yeah,
perhaps.
I'm like a strong 8 or 9 because here's the thing. The first 90 pages, 10. The next 40 to 50, 5. And then, I guess like the remaining like 110, 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where there was like, honestly, I didn't like the hostess story. I thought it was
That's a big chunk.
It's a big chunk. It's a big chunk. Like that's the 40 to 50 I'm referring to.
And that was the story of the Marquis, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And
I found that one
Mademoiselle de la Pommeraye. That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know. I just like with that story. It wasn't the story itself that was boring, but I found the telling of it kind of grueling, to be honest. Like the constant starts and stops, like. And it's not that the other. Let me try to pinpoint exactly what it was.
I wonder if
maybe I found the story boring. To be honest, yeah.
I wonder if we had different experiences reading it because, like that was the part where I was reading very much without a time crunch, so I was kind of free to read with respect to the breaks, like at my pleasure. Do you know what I mean? So I didn't find it. I would have given that section of the story like a 7. So for me, it went 10, 7, 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 10, 5, 10. Like I said,
Okay.
like I just didn't like that area of the story. I mean, there were elements of it that were pretty funny. I mean,
it goes on for like 50
it's a
plus
long
pages.
story.
This is actually huge.
Yes, it's definitely a long story.
But small in comparison to the 250 overall pages. You know what I mean? So, but
True.
But I'm gonna be honest, like that was But like that was like an issue in getting me to read it because whenever I'd pick it up, I found it hard to get back into it in that section. And I found I found it hard to push. Like there were sections of this where I was reading like 40 pages in the hour. Happily, it was so easy. It was wonderful. It was like funny, laugh out loud funny, where I was just cackling and just just reading with like the utmost pleasure. But that section, it was like I was like really pushing through those 50 pages because honestly, like I got that text from you saying like, oh, once I got to page like 160, 170, the rest I just like literally binged the rest, and that was actually my experience too, actually. But
it wasn't exactly mine, but yeah. I think that was a dip. That was a dip.
I thought it was a dip. Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't mind it, but I definitely experienced a thing where, like, especially because it's like stories nested within stories nested within stories. If you like put it down in the wrong place, it's really a struggle to pick back up. I mentioned this in the first part, I think, where like I just had to go back a few pages until I was like a natural place where I could reorient myself whenever I started and stopped. So that definitely doesn't help, like the structure. But I think for me, it would be kind of like I think originally I said it was like an 8, and I think it dipped to like a 6, and then back to an 8 for me. I don't think this is a Mount Rushmore paper, or not a paper, but a novella for me. But it was definitely enjoyable.
Yeah. I don't know. If you force me to actually spell out what my Mount Rushmore, like I was talking like books in general, it might not make the top. I don't know. I don't
mean to dissuade you. Like it seems like I was kind of like the outlier in the first part as well.
That's true.
If you asked me, is this a top book you have read? Yes. I thought this was an amazing book, and I would totally recommend this book to people.
Oh, yeah.
Like so. You know what
I like about this book?
Without a doubt, it's that. You know what I mean?
This is like a very easy blanket recommendation. Like I don't have to know a lot about a person to recommend this book.
You know I don't know.
Really.
I feel like I would have to be making some strategic observations in order to really recommend this.
Really? See, this is
totally agree.
Oh, see, I'm viewing this as
part of the reason I think I rated it a little bit lower is like it was enjoyable, but like
really,
I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't just like post it on like social media. It's like pinned to the top. It's like read Jacques the Fatalist.
I'm seeing this book as somewhat of a litmus test then, where it's like I would happily recommend this to almost
10.
anyone.
You're a moron.
Especially if you read it as
moron.
No, but it's like if you actually dislike this book, I'm not sure that like me and that person would be compatible. Like, imagine disliking this book.
Yeah, I definitely didn't dislike it. It was just like, there were moments that were, amusing. I didn't experience that kind of like rush through the like last 80 or so pages like you described.
Mm-hmm.
Like I actually read that in multiple parts the same way I did the first part. But it was very, very amusing.
Murder. Thief. Fire. That's my response to that.
Did you guys have any I don't know, did you guys have any like one-off quotes that you thought were funny? There was one that I found very I got like a good grin at on this is just, it doesn't matter the context, but like the master is telling Jacques about someone he used to know, like before. He said there were days when he was tempted not to believe in the Bible, and the master says, why was that? And Jacques says, because of the repetitions in it, which he regarded as idle chatter unworthy of the Holy Spirit. He used to say that people who repeated themselves were idiots who took those listening to them for idiots. I was like, yeah, that actually does, like, that is the Bible. It's very like idle chatter.
Was that his grandfather? The one who used to kind of gag him as a child?
Yeah,
that was.
So, I had a kind of good grin at that because I was like, honestly, like, yes, the Bible is actually incredibly boring and repetitive.
Extremely boring. Yeah, it's very tough to pick up and read. So I mean,
I found a one-off quote. There's no context. If you are innocent, you will not read my work. If, on the other hand, you are depraved, you may read me without consequence.
Yes, I was just like, truly, I tell you, I am depraved. I loved that. I loved that quote.
Really funny.
And also, like, again, a similar vein, he kind of goes on and says, like, okay, but if it is in fact a great work, you will not condemn me for the vulgarity, and be widely read, and so much the better. And if it's in fact vulgar but not great work, it will not be widely read, and so much the better for that. So much the worse, I think he says. So
yeah. So I think one of the things, just like overall, that I think limited my appreciation of the book is that this I think was mentioned in the introduction as well. But I think this was supposed to be kind of like a critique of the novels coming out at the time. So it's kind of like is dated sort of in that way, where my impression of like novels, which, it's not like I don't read like very many like traditional novels, I don't think, but I have read a few, including classics. But like, I feel like I would have a much deeper appreciation if we were kind of in like a landscape where like people publish novels and that's basically like what you read and that's like it. So some of the criticisms and like, humor and satire would come off a little better then.
When did the Three Musketeers come out? I honestly haven't looked this one up. By it was that be Alexander Dumas? Was that his name?
Dumas.
I'm not sure.
Dumas. Yeah, because I know that's I've never actually read like
what about Don Quixote? Was that 1800s?
Oh, really early. Okay. Really early. Like the
1844 is the Three Musketeers.
Really? Okay.
What's Don Quixote?
Is that by Cervantes?
Yeah.
I would have thought that was.
I don't know.
Early 1700s.
Okay.
Maybe late 1600s.
Well, I'll Google it. Published in English in 1612.
Whoa.
I don't know when it was actually written, though.
Wow.
Jesus.
That's extremely ancient.
Wow. I've never read it, though.
No, neither have I. There's a funny Borges story about that, actually. We should actually read that one time. It's very funny.
It'd be nice to go back to Borges at some point.
I would like that actually. Okay, so like I know you guys liked the story a little bit less than I did, but like the story of the Marquis, just because it's like, you know, one of the first things that we read. I did find it funny that like the something La Pomerane, what was like it was like
Mademoiselle de la Pomerane.
Yeah. I actually did kind of like, I found it interesting how she set up that very elaborate plan to betray her not husband, but sort of like
once lover kind of.
Yeah, it was sort of like
friend.
Yeah, and like I don't know, like the way the story was set up, you definitely like felt that this guy was kind of like a bit of a bastard, where like they seemed to be very happy together, and then he was just like for no reason at all just kind of like grew tired of her, you know. It's just like he was like a very unlikable figure.
Yeah, and even like the characters who were listening to the story, like Jacques and his master, I believe, are kind of commenting on which one's like more like devilish, right?
Yeah.
The Marquis or, you know, Madame.
But even that though, like, okay, so there was like some I don't know, I forget what you would call that, but kind of like to bookend the story, like okay, Diderot kind of like engages in dialogue with the reader where he's like almost like, okay, you at the moment, you as the reader, you're freaking out at the duplicity of, you know, Mademoiselle de la Pomerane, and it's like, I'm not really. You know what I mean? I guess it's like I guess I
agree.
I feel like that was like a bit dated, where it was like, you know, any man reading this, like maybe in the 18th century, was like, I can't believe a woman would have done this. But
you know, 100%.
You know, but now it's like, yeah, clearly the Marquis was like, you know, the treacherous, duplicitous one himself. I mean, you know, just coming to her house constantly and just like, you know, talking about it, like how he desires like this young girl, and it's just like,
yeah, he was like torturing her with that.
Yes, and it's like, I mean,
he basically just let him torture himself.
It honestly,
to a certain extent.
Yes, but like the thing that I thought was actually really interesting, not really interesting about the story, but it's just like it kind of made me reflect. Because she sets up that like elaborate plan, which actually seems pretty ingenious at first. And, you know, he kind of like, he gets him, you know, she there's that whole plan to kind of like take him for everything he's worth and leave him loveless, and kind of betray him in the process. But then like he actually, in the end, her plan kind of unravels, and he actually does get that beautiful young girl, and he loses nothing. Like, and they just go off to the countryside and spend a few years there together. And I was just like, I don't know. It actually kind of made me think of like two things. One is like Giffin, you'll recall from Ecclesiastes. I remembered that quote from Ecclesiastes where it was like, you know, I don't remember it verbatim, but it was Solomon saying like, you know, don't lust after revenge, for there is no justice on earth. You know, the sinners do not get their just deserts, nor do the saints get their just rewards, but time and chance happen to them all. Or remember that? I was just like that. It kind of made me think about that too, where if she would have just like, I don't know, it kind of made me think of like, okay, yeah, this woman was like wronged, but like if she would have just kind of moved on, like she might have had a happier life.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, both of the people kind of seem to have been performing less than admirably.
Yeah,
but
she was definitely vindictive. Yeah,
I definitely agree with Adam's perspective, where like the narrator was like trying to cool us down. I'm like, I wasn't really that like irate. Like if I was a duke, you know, walking around with my like horses and grain bags, perhaps I would, you know, feel a little bit more sympathetic. You know, like, oh, a woman deceived me. But like it's super dated. Like, no, it really was super dated. I was kind of just like curious as to what like was going to happen at that point. Whenever I was like being like, you know, calm down.
Did you guys also? Okay, we actually didn't talk about this, but in the Sartre Existentialism is a Humanism, he had that one section. It was only a few sentences where he remarked on the fact that there's actually very little difference between sort of like play acting and real experience of emotions, where he says like, remember this was kind of when he was talking about,
I think so,
the young man's choice, and he says, you know, if he thinks he must merely pretend to love his mother by staying, that is actually like what it would be to love his mother. Like the act of staying is, even to fake that action, is to sort of do the action still, right? Kind of like it reminded me of his, like his whole thing about like there is no potentiality and that kind of stuff with his like mantra. There was the girl, like the young girl, kind of reminded me of that in a way, where she like, she's very duplicitous herself in having no real interest in this guy, but wanting to kind of take him for all he's worth. And then you get the sense in the end where she actually might have developed like true feelings through fake acting for this guy. I don't know. It made me like think about that Sartre quote there, and it was like, I don't know. It's like we've got like it made me think about like maybe we have like less of a firm hold on our emotions than we think we do in some sense.
Yeah, I didn't go that direction personally, and I definitely see that. I don't know. I just definitely felt like, these were two sort of destitute people that, had hopes of being rewarded. I mean, it's not as like, philosophical as you're taking it, but they had serious hopes of being rewarded in this duplicity. And it seemed like, in the end, all they got was shame. So like, that's why she had that sort of freak out while she was, begging at his knees, like kissing his feet, just begging for his forgiveness. I don't know if that was love, or if she had developed feelings.
Yeah,
there's definitely an incentive there to like, cover some of your losses, right? You spend like months developing.
But
this,
that was the thing that kind of freaked me out almost, is like, you almost wonder if like from her perspective, do you almost lose sight of like your own emotional reality under those circumstances? It just made me kind of wonder.
She didn't see too much of them though. You know what I mean? Like
that's true. Yeah.
Like they really did keep the the meetings infrequent, and it seemed like a lot of time certainly had been invested in this scheme, but the bonding aspect wasn't something that was necessarily focused on. I mean, you could point to instances like, okay, they had this sit down dinner together where he was making jokes and they were laughing, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, you could point to those, but that wasn't something emphasized for me, like the bonding. It just seemed like she was a young girl who had been manipulated by maybe her more jaded mother. And
I mean, this is like a prostitute and like the prostitute's mom / manager, basically, right?
Yeah.
So like, this is basically like they risked a lot. I mean, it already kind of like they weren't really doing great to begin with, but they risked even that business to like go along with, in good faith with Madame de la Pommeraye. And at that point, like, this girl's about to be, I mean, part of like this grand revenge was like, it was supposed to be the humiliation of like this gentleman marquis, marrying a prostitute, right? That's like that was like the revenge, right? So she was about to be outed publicly as a prostitute. So like she wasn't going to be getting too much out of it in the end, it seemed like, unless like Madame de la Pommeraye was like really going to like set her up after this. So at this point, like when things were kind of like not going perfectly, like I totally see it as like I understand, like I should say, the mixture of emotion, because like simultaneously, like you think that this guy might actually treat you well, right? Like he's not like a complete villain, he's just kind of a scoundrel. But like also you're kind of faced with the prospect of like, well, if I do like actually just beg at his feet and he actually does kind of take pity on me, because like I know he's attracted to me, like I'll probably live a better life than like going back to like being an exposed prostitute, at a young age.
But I agree with your larger point though, Jordan, that like Giffin's saying right now, like, okay, yeah, it seemed like it was more of like an act of desperation in the moment, but at the same time, like, yeah, Madame de la Pommeraye, like she didn't get her revenge in the end. Like that wasn't the revenge she ultimately sought.
Yeah, and they went to the countryside.
Yeah, exactly. So your point still stands. I completely agree with that, but I'm not sure that she ever fell in love with him, and I don't know about that. But I do think there's like a kind of an element where like
the blending of emotions can actually kind of like make it hard to decipher them. Like if you're in this position where like, yeah, you're a position of desperation and you kind of like are putting yourself in that situation where like, just please, like, you know, take pity on me. Like at a certain point, like, can you really like separate like the fact that like your situation might be improved by this guy from like the, you know, from him, right? Like I think you might develop feelings like, there.
Yeah, I was just pointing to that weird ambiguity there where it's like I could actually imagine it being like very difficult to discern almost like manufactured feelings from organic ones.
From like our perspective?
No, from
like,
hers.
Story?
No.
That's what I was saying. Yeah. 100% agree.
I found that like kind of interesting to think about.
I mean, she proposed kind of like if you go back to like the text. I mean, I don't have that in front of me, but I think she proposes like 15 different things. She's like, you know, let me die, kill me, you know, strike me down. Like, I mean, she's like, you know, show mercy at everything. It's like, it seems like everything has collapsed, and
yeah, he's irate for a while too.
Oh yeah,
and you also get the sense
she faints, I think, like once or twice.
Oh yeah, she definitely.
She was like really not in a good condition.
No, totally. But you also get like the sense that she was the most honorable character of them all. I mean, she seemed to be most affected by any act of duplicity that she took part of, and you don't really see that from many of the other characters. I mean, you certainly get, you know, fear on behalf of her mother, right? That they've been like caught in the act of this treachery. I mean, certainly, you know, Madame de la Pommeraye doesn't feel like remorse or contrition regarding what she did. The Marquis never really like, I mean, he's completely unaware of his just, you know,
he's like an oaf in that story.
No, he's like a perfidious creature that just like, you know, has to like kind of impose himself on a former lover. Well, actually, I think that was his wife. I don't know
that it was clear the relationship, how formal it was.
Well, I think they...
Like, at the very least, that they had like a courting, but... maybe they were actually married.
I think they were married, to be honest. I think they were. Because
remember, I believe that actually.
There was that one page dedicated to Madame de la Pommeraye having to kind of face the... I guess judgment of her peers, other ladies in society, as she would have been looked upon someone that was chaste until she was married, when everyone else can then, you know, look at her as if she had lowered to their level. You know, she is now someone that participates in these acts as a result of being married, as opposed to, you know, the chaste, kind of the haughty, the, you know, sanctimonious Madame de la Pommeraye that didn't engage in these kind of bodily acts that they knew she would now be participating in as a married woman. I do recall that. So I think
I believe you.
Yeah,
that's
fair. Think she was married. So, but
so that story does take up quite a chunk of this story.
Yeah.
Story within a story within a story. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like bad, but like,
well, let's move on from that story.
I think we should.
Yeah. That's my least favorite story.
Okay. I actually really like to talk about, in the introduction, there were like themes listed, and one that actually was not listed, but I thought was so sort of ubiquitous and very interesting within the novel that honestly I was surprised to see it not discussed, was like, there were many instances and tones of amorality in this story, and I like I'm kind of I'd like to discuss, like, you know, maybe any story relevant to that for a minute, because definitely one of my favorite stories was like just the entire tale of that debaucherous Father Hudson.
Yeah,
where like that guy seemed to be like, okay, like if morality just like did not exist, like how would you live? Like that guy, he definitely struck me as like viewing himself as, remember we discussed that movie Rope, how those two, you remember those two kids, like saw themselves kind of like above common morality, and they were like the Ubermensches, so they could do whatever. The Father Hudson absolutely struck me as in line with that philosophy. Where he was just like, life is about like what I can take from it almost. And like not even in a villainous way, but like an amoral way. It was like I was that was a story where I could not put it down until I was done with the story of Father Hudson.
It was a good one.
Yeah, I definitely
the amoral priest.
yes,
riding around in scandals.
Because the whole story was that like he was this just like debaucherous father who was just like obsessed with having like as many relations as he could with like, you know, just kind of, I guess, the women of the town.
The townsfolk, yeah.
So he and I remember he was sort of shipped in to reform the local like because
the church is faltering, the morals are like falling. Like, he's like, I can help.
Yeah, like he was kind of brought in to like, you know, ship up the local church, and he was just like, you get the sense that like he almost like installed these catacombs for like women to be just like brought up through, and like, you know, so he was just, you know, getting it on like up in the father's chambers, and but remember it said
it's even funnier than that though, because remember, one door opens to the streets and the other door opens to like the larger building. So like women would just openly come into like his room from the street, and like, but no one could, you know, no one who was a part of like the parish could enter his room except through the street. So women would come in like in and out of the room, and like visibly so too. I mean, I remember like the one time where it was some wife of a man in the village was found to be like in the room. So like obviously like the husband was irate. I think possibly there were a few commissioners and relatives that had also arrived to, you know, figure out what was going on. And when an accusation started to fly, you know, just kind of like impugning Hudson, he began to chant and like in whatever sort of like church lyrics, and they're like then they all kind of just backed off, like, oh, how could we ever accuse Father Hudson? You know what I mean? It's just like
like he's angrily recite like a benediction. It's like, oh,
but I think it also said
holy man here.
I think it also referred to him as being severely stern with the lower priests too, where he would just punish anything to a monstrous degree.
Yeah, like in a weird way, he actually kind of does like ship up the church, you know.
Yes.
Like, the institution is shored up, and just under his like he has like this like fist of injustice that comes down on everyone.
Yeah,
simply because it facilitates his debauchery.
Yes,
no other reason than that.
Yes, he ruled with like an iron fist.
And then like there's like kind of like the scene where it's like, people are trying to like subvert him. He kind of treats it as a game.
No, it was like I actually just like that was one of the most duplicitous like sections ever, because, you know, because there were, you know, I don't remember like what the inciting incident was, but there was basically like a commission established that was joint between like the law and the other clergy, essentially, and you get the sense that he was almost like psychopathic.
I think it involved prostitution, actually. Like there was like a scandal. Yeah.
So, well, it wasn't that I don't think that Father Hudson had been engaged in prostitution, although it may be that actually. You get the sense that he was like, you know, he like hears of this, you know, kind of like, you know, investigation committee established. You get the sense that he didn't even like break a sweat over it. He was just like, remember, like, you know, that the young girl he was with was terrified, and he, you know, kind of just soothed her like, no, my dear, like, well, this will be taken care of. And he sets it up where, I don't remember like all of the strings he pulled, but
they were trying to, two priests were trying to catch him in a trap, but he just completely outplays them.
So what he does is he then tells the girl, okay, so he's like, okay, we've been found out. There are two investigators here at the church who are going to turn us both in, right? So he's like, you need to go to these two men and claim that, like, I debauched you, I forced you to do these things, but then, like, set up, like, another meeting and then continue to explain and tell further of my misdeeds, and don't hold back. Tell the worst things you can imagine of me. Yeah. So she has like these several meetings with these guys, and then finally Father Hudson directs her and says, okay, this time you're going to ask to meet these two men in this specific house, which everybody else knows is a brothel, except for the two investigators because they're from outside the town. So she meets these two men in, again, the brothel, and we learn, this is like early, doesn't matter, but Father Hudson is like, has like an in with like the commissioner of the town. Yes. So then he like then directs the commissioner to go like meet these two men, yes, or like to go find these two priests. Men. Yes. Yeah, to find these two priests in the brothel. And then,
yes. So and they're just like taken away in chains.
Two priests in the brothel with a prostitute.
Yes, it was just like exactly what he himself had been accused of. So it was just like
and he's been doing.
Yeah, I just found him like a very interesting case study in like, someone just seeing themselves as like truly above like the law, like morality. It was like he's a very interesting test case.
Yeah, I'm not sure he did any sort of moral self-reflection ever. No, it's very much just like practical self-reflection. Like, all right, we got some new pups in town. We gotta teach them to not mess with Father Hudson.
A lot of fun like visuals like in that chapter too, where it's or like that section where what's the word for like a fast carriage again? What's the word for like that word shows up, and I did look it up, and I forget the name for it. But regardless, like it's really funny because after like these two men are imprisoned, it says that he then got in a fast carriage and rode off like with great haste to Versailles. So immediately to like get permission to like to free these two men, but to also have them exiled. So
punish them.
Yeah.
I don't know what the term is you're referring to. It's that kind of did not make it through the 2 weeks.
It's a pretty obviously useful term.
Châtelet.
Yes.
Chevalier? No.
It's CHA with not an umlaut because it's German, but like what
accent?
The French carrot is TELET, but the last ET has to be silent, right? So it's Châtel.
I don't even know what page are we on.
That actually might be where shuttle derives from. 175. I don't know. Oh wait, no. That's actually referring to the brothel house, I think.
Don't go using that in public.
Okay, yeah. Didn't say.
I rode away in a brothel house. I can't find. It was actually. You're right. It was a great word.
Oh well,
sure. I definitely got the sense that like Father Hudson was the type of guy who just absolutely lived like a hedonic life to like the highest degree he could, and I don't think he definitely strikes me as the guys that never felt bad about like a single thing he did.
Yeah, there were pleasures and then obstacles to his pleasure.
Yes.
He could delineate them very clearly and identify them and deal with them, and that was like the entire framework.
And he was like incorrigible until like his last moments. I mean, like later on, like when one of the investigators encounters him at the like home of some widow or whatever, but like Father Hudson's there. It's maybe I forget how long, like in the future, maybe like a decade or two. But Father Hudson like suddenly arrives at the cottage arm in arm with like a beautiful woman of the town, and so like the investigator immediately begins just sort of like, just kind of joking with him about it, just kind of like, to quote the book, taking the piss. With Father Hudson saying, well, certainly, you haven't really changed. And he's like, Father Hudson's like, no, I've completely reformed. Like, I now like take the scriptures very seriously. Like, I now no longer desire the flesh. And he's like, okay, well, you must at least admit that like her hands are beautiful. And he's like, no, I mean, like, maybe in some objective sense, but not nothing that I would desire. And he's like, well, certainly her thighs, certainly. And then finally, by the end, Father Hudson's like, you got me, So, I mean, like he just hasn't changed. So.
No, he definitely hasn't. There was also a lot of amorality surrounding Jacques. He kind of telling like the tale of his loves in general, like kind of his first there's definitely just like themes of amorality running through that as well. There was one very funny quote. This is Jacques. Like his master says, like, oh, like how many girls have you been with? And Jacques responds, that would be like the first chapter of Luke's gospel, a litany of begats from the first one up to Denis the last. I thought that's extremely funny.
that was a good one.
I actually thought that was very, very funny.
Yeah. This is obviously a very large recurring kind of thing, but Jacques wants to tell the story of his this specific love that we were interested in, and then just randomly the master is just like, what about your virginity? Like, when did you lose your virginity? And it's the entire story gets derailed so that Jacques can tell this one story. I thought it was one of the funniest parts that I found was Jacques was gonna begin the story. He concedes eventually. He's like, but what about the story of my other love? Like, what about the story of Denis? And he's like, I want to hear this other tale. Like, Jacques, do not deny me this. But then Jacques is about to start telling. He's like, as I stand before you now, monsieur, I was once baptized. And then the master was like, if you intend to start the loss of your virginity with your emergence from the front, we're not going to get there very quickly. It's just we're 180 pages in, and Jacques is like, all right, I was born in baptized. I thought that was very funny, just because we were so long about this one story.
I love to. He's right about to tell the tale of his loss of virginity, and the master turns to him and he says, "I bet you were deflowered by some dreadful old bag from your village." Deflowered by some dreadful old bag from your village.
The dialogue in this book is unparalleled in so many areas.
The dialogue is fantastic.
Yeah.
Jacques and his master are actually fantastic characters. There's such a great dynamic there.
Yeah.
Did you guys definitely get because okay, Jacques tells the story of his loss of his virginity in a way that again does not seem to be bashful in any way, or sort of there's a bit of repentance in his voice or whatever, because it's definitely
more of regret that he got caught.
Because it's definitely a very gray story in the sense that I think his master comments at one point, he was like, well, she didn't have much say in the matter, did she? And he was like, well, what's done is done.
I need to find what his master does whenever, because his quote's too good there.
It's very good.
That's one I just cackled out loud.
It's basically.
Oh, man.
He has sex with his best friend's girlfriend, essentially.
Bugger the son.
Yeah.
He's mad. That was a great part too. Whenever he was saying yeah, my son Bugger, and the master's like, what the fuck?
Yes.
And then Bugger, you liar.
And then Diderot, kind of addresses the reader directly. He's like, you may be thinking, how could someone actually be named Bugger? And he says, well, why not?
You can imagine if there was a French, a famous French a patisserie in Paris, Bugger would have a better sounding name. It's why not?
He was like, if Bugger had stormed the Bastille, or whatever it was,
It's a little early, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but
that's basically
whatever.
the idea. Is
Yeah.
Why do you think Bugger's a ridiculous name? And then every line for the next 20 pages, Bugger the son. It's not even the kid's name. But yeah.
So, well, okay, so I'll just start from the top of this page. This is 186, but he said, okay, and anyway, I was still bitter about her earlier rejection of me. By way of reply, I pushed her towards the ladder which led down to the workshop. She let out a long cry of fear. Bugger heard this and said, This is the father. Yeah, which is another great character. He must be dreaming. Yeah, so Justine's the girlfriend. Justine fainted. Her knees gave way under her. In her delirium, she said in a stifled voice, "He's going to come. He's coming. I can hear him coming up. I'm lost." No, I replied in a muffled voice. "Calm down, shut up, and get into bed."
This is taking place in the Friends, like, lofted bedroom.
Yes. She persisted in her refusal. I held firm. She resigned herself, and then we were there, the one beside the other. And the master butts in. He's like, "You traitor! You criminal! Do you know what crime you're about to commit? You're about to rape that girl. If not by sheer force, then by force of terror. Yeah. If you were brought before a court of law, you'll be punished with all the severity reserved for rapists." And it's just like, I love that interjection there. He's like, "You traitor! You criminal!"
Jacques' response is so amoral. He's just like, I don't know whether I raped her or not, but I do know that I didn't do her any harm, and she didn't do me any harm either. It was just like, what? At first she turned her mouth away from my kisses and whispered, "No, Jacques, no." At this, I pretended to get out of bed and go towards the ladder. She held me back, basically leaving her there for like bugger to find.
Yeah.
She held me back and whispered in my ear again, "I would never have thought you were so wicked." I can see there's no use asking to have pity on me, but at least promise me, swear to me. What? That bugger will never know. And
Bugger the son, I believe.
Bugger the son, master. And you promised, you swore, and everything went very well. Jacques, and then again, very well. He just embraces it.
And then very well again, the master has.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. You speak like a man who was there himself. No, I 100% agree.
He continues. Meanwhile, Bugger, my friend, impatient, worried, and tired of prowling around his house waiting for me, decided to go home to his father, who said angrily, "You've been away a long time over nothing." So he just and then Bugger finds out or whatever, but he forgives. It was just like,
there's a whole like separate set of scandals with two other women in the town.
Oh, dude, there were so many, like, there was. So that
was the story of his virginity loss, but then you have like the dual.
Oh my! I have to
traitorousness again. I don't know if we want to find a good page to start. Just kind of go through the.
I know. I demand that I make.
It's hilarious.
Okay, so Jacques.
Suzanne, is that the first one?
Well, yes, until it was like the wrong name.
You go on.
So so Jacques sets this up by saying he was at some sort of like a party or a ceremony or something, a wedding, I think, actually.
Yeah, it was like a very social like town event.
It was a wedding, yeah.
Yeah, and there were these...
Remember, he was situated between two best men who kept on who were kind of fools.
Yeah, they were drunk fools too, so they were sort of like making themselves out to look like just fools through and through. Yeah. And their wives were sort of like just taking an interest in young Jacques. He was like 17, 18 or whatever, and they definitely like seemed to show an interest. And then he was called by the first one. She kind of arrived at his house to help her, was it like tend to her orchards or something? I don't remember.
Some sort of gardening or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, she kind of like gave him like a very just like, knowing look. And so he's like, so he kind of like comes along, but he's pretending like his whole ploy is that he's still a virgin or whatever. So he doesn't know like.
Yeah, he pretended to act like completely innocent during like the wedding. So like to the point like the women found it very amusing and like
and they sort of they had an interest in sort of to use Diderot's word, like deflowering him. And so he's pretending. So this is Jacques telling the master, because he says, the Margaret asks, do you know what a woman is? Kind of flirting with Jacques, and Jacques responds, "A woman. Wait a minute. It's a man, but with skirts, a bonnet, and big tits." And his master goes, "You villain." For pretending. So basically, like, he had sex with her, and and just like pretending to like not know what he was doing or whatever. This was like Marjorie became quiet. She took hold of one of my hands. I don't know where she put it, but the fact is I cried out, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. Like pretending you didn't know what like a woman was. Just like... and then his master goes, you scoundrel, you double-dyed scoundrel.
That would be like any of our reactions too. If one of us was telling a story like this, like
you villain.
Yeah.
What
and she ultimately finds out like right after it's over that like he had been lying to her,
I thought it was the second one where he did that.
I think it's after the first one.
No, because the second one knew, she could kind of tell that he wasn't a virgin.
Okay.
Yeah. It was like extremely funny because like he definitely just lied with alacrity to those two women also. It just like did not, you get to say he had like zero remorse. I mean, he would probably say like the same thing. He was like, there was no harm that resulted to me and there was certainly none to them or whatever,
It was very much like very similar to Father Hudson, It's like I observed that this would be pleasurable and there were, some obstacles to that pleasure and they were easily overcome. Deception, who cares?
Yeah, with Susan or Suzanne.
Suzanne.
Yeah, so it's like, let's see. So the master said, took away the virginity you never had. And Jacques said, that is true, but she wasn't fooled, and smiled at me and said, well, you certainly fooled my husband. God, you're a rogue. I love like the rogue term throughout this book too, because you can just imagine like the wandering man kind of going from town to town who just like, tricks and bedevils people. It's just like the rogue. So,
that's basically Jacques. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, it was fun. And like right after that series of stories, like the Father Hudson, the loss of Jacques' virginity, and then the tricking of the two women is when Diderot, kind of like addressing the reader, says that quote that you said, Giffin. He says, if you are innocent, you will not read my work. If, on the other hand, you are depraved, you may read me without consequence. So it was like, you get the sense that like Diderot himself kind of embraced the amorality of it, where he was like, he was like, well, what do you want? Like, do you want me to tell you some chaste story where it was like, nothing happens? I don't know. I thought that very funny. He kind of like he's like, well, you're reading this with pleasure too. Like, don't see yourself.
Yeah, basically, it's like the fact that you're reading this far basically just means you're, you're a scoundrel.
Yeah,
practically. Like, you wouldn't be reading this certainly this far if like, if you were, innocent.
No,
that marks you as someone who's enjoying my work.
Yeah.
I also love this story about who was he with when like the one priest with like a stutter?
That was right after.
Because like I mean, I won't use any names here, but like there's like this priest with like a stutter who kind of like lusts after like this one wife in the town, but he himself is like apparently very short and kind of like deformed looking.
198-ish. I'm finding it.
Yeah, and like so.
Let me down.
Yeah, and like he like ultimately like the priest finds like Jacques and like this woman like kind of getting it on, and like he just like Jacques kind of like I don't know, I guess like just kind of shocks the man by like just exposing the woman in front of him, and like and the guy can't even like, he doesn't even like know how to respond, because it says like, okay, Jacques says, next I undid, okay, this is still Susan, but next I undid Susan's blouse, took her breasts, caressed them. She resisted a little. In the barn, there was a pack saddle whose other uses were well known to us. I pushed her onto it. I pulled up her skirts, and then so like the priest like barely able to like contain his anger, he started shouting, "Murder! Fire! The thief!" So
And then the husband, whom we thought was far away, ran in like, to see the scene.
And Jacques able to like kind of sneak out. So like, yes. It's like the husband sees just like the priest like with his wife in this room. So like
he's holding him up with a pitchfork in the air. The priest, let me down.
Yeah,
it's a very funny scene.
I'm looking at my notes for other themes because that was there were definitely okay, going backwards in the book a little bit. He had this quote on 166 that, let me find it. Okay, I'll just read it because this actually made me think of almost like a Sartre's sense of like the nausea or sort of like the general anxiety or absurdity of life creeping in. So this is kind of, I think, Diderot almost talking directly to us, I think. And he says, there comes a moment when nearly all young girls and young boys become melancholic. They are disturbed by a vague uneasiness which extends to everything and can find no consolation. They look for solitude. They weep. The silence of the cloister moves them, and the image of peace which seems to reign in religious houses seduces them. They mistake the first movements of their developing emotions for the voice of God calling them. It is at this precise moment when nature is calling them that they embrace a life which is contrary to the laws of nature. Their mistake does not last. The voice of nature becomes clear and is heard, and the prisoner falls into regrets, listlessness, swooning, madness, or despair. I actually thought that was a really interesting idea there, where, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like I definitely can't think of like kind of like a moment in life where you do actually like develop kind of the ability to feel anxious. But I definitely remember like just kind of thinking back to like our younger days, for me at least, like they're definitely like I feel like I lived for a very long time without the realization that like bad things could happen or like truly awful things could happen. I don't know. Do you know, kind of like, do you sympathize with that?
No, 100%. I was like infinitely more carefree than I am now.
Yeah. Once that all kind of crashes on you, I think that is a kind of a natural developmental response, which is what he's describing here. You know, like you kind of fall into like melancholy at a certain point, you know, because you're faced with realizations about life, but you kind of don't have the tools to even address it necessarily.
No,
you know, you get the one without the other, and then, you know, he's describing a situation where kind of you like fall into some poor aspect of religion, and you know, or whatever it is, and then can't really go back.
No, it's just like people totally deal with that in like different ways, where he says like some people fall into like listlessness, some swooning, some madness, or some despair. And I think he like kind of previously points like turning to religion as like as a farcical way of dealing with that too, right? So it's like, I don't know, I definitely it's funny too, because I feel as though kind of Diderot through Jacques in a lot of ways is almost responding to the problem of that, you know, Sartrean nausea, with the response of like there is kind of no answer but to almost embrace the absurdity again, and sort of like you have to like turn towards the thing that is weighing you down and like radically accept it in a way. I don't know, because there's definitely like I maybe I'm reading a bit into this, but maybe this is just my interpretation, but you know, Jacques' kind of fatalistic attitude mixed with they're definitely like, we've been talking about like the themes of amorality in this book. It's sort of like there are no values besides the ones that you choose to embrace. And like Jacques himself has many times where he very directly embraces the absurdity of life in a way where he's kind of challenged, you know, by his master, by other people, you know, if it's written above, you know, why do you still do these things? Or whenever he says, well, you know, it's written above that I'll do them. Like, so I kind of enjoy the ride or whatever. I don't know, like that part definitely spoke to me to a large extent.
I'd hesitate to compare it to like nausea in particular, like Sartre's nausea. Not very convincing that it would be a 10 for me, but I think you're broadly right. I don't know, Adam, it looked like I interrupted you. You can go ahead.
No, but I'll say that I think this book, I don't disagree with a lot of what you said, Jordan, but I will say I definitely think this book is maybe less prescriptive.
Oh yeah.
Than, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I was saying that's like what I read it as. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I think there's
it asks you to
I think you're right about the outlook, about the outlook of much of the book, and certainly his condemnation of certain practices, like you pointed out there, like he definitely condemns like turning to religion as a result. I mean, like that's something clear throughout the book as well. But to embrace the absurd or not to, you know what I mean? I don't know. I think
no,
I think you know what I mean? Like
I don't mean to say that I think Diderot is making some sort of like a didactic argument or a didactic point with this. I don't think there is a therefore to the novel. I was saying that was
exactly,
something
but
it's
there though. You're right about that. Like it's present, it's real in the book.
He makes you address it, whether like you
totally
do something with it is
Yeah, totally agree with that.
I feel like there's almost an implicit and inchoate challenge almost to people who would subscribe to like many of these kind of absurd, well, that's the wrong word, obviously incoherent forms of meaning in life, right? Like, the person who embraces the devout, like they wouldn't be able to get a lot out of this book, but then he would be like, okay, well, you're kind of closing yourself off to like many experiences here or whatever. Or the person who just like, is melancholic, he would kind of point to Jacques' upbeat attitude and be like, okay, well, there's nothing, you know what I mean? I feel like there's a lot in this to challenge a lot in here.
Definitely. And even areas where, it's not as explicit. I mean, like I'm thinking of, while you were talking there, I thought of, there's a line in the book where Jacques says, that I guess maybe this is like a philosophy he took from his master, not his master, his captain, where he, ultimately rejoices in the stories of like, kind of naughty priests, because ultimately like they're doing good to balance out the image of priests in general, right? Because like, so it's better that they be there to balance out, the influence that good priests have, because ultimately there's no real substance behind that. And so it's not like as
Jacques will drink to Father Hudson.
exactly. So he drinks to like the evil deeds of certain men, just to kind of just lower the view of what they stand for, because it seems like Jacques really stands for nothing. So
yeah, it's like don't without them, like they would seem more legitimate institutions than they are, right?
Yeah,
a little bit of honesty piercing into the world, in a way.
There was also the narrator. I don't know. The narrator also kind of reminded me of something from Sartre's Existentialism is a Humanism, where like the narrator kind of like several times, but one specific one made me kind of think about this, where he, like, Diderot kind of through the narrator's voice offers us like, many ways that the story could have gone. He does that repeatedly. He kind of says like, well, this could have happened, or you might have expected this to happen, but it didn't. I don't know. Again, it kind of made me think about like that's how we, like, I don't know, this point seems obvious, but like that is how we go through life, like constantly. Like any decision we made, we don't know like what the other options would have led to, and there's always that unknown. And like it just kind of made me think about Sartre's like, like that radical freedom is like what produces the sense of nausea in us, because we're just like, he says it's like we hold like the entire weight of ourselves on our shoulders at every moment of every day, because you are radically free to do anything and you must choose. And by like, it almost kind of like it reminded me of that, the garden of forking paths, where like when you choose one path, you decisively close off the possibility of other paths.
You have taken that path.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know.
That is the path you will have taken in the future going forward. That's it.
Yeah. And like, honestly, I actually do get like, I don't think anxiety is the right word, but it's like, okay, something that like really bothers me a lot is not necessarily choosing one path, but the fact that to choose one path eliminates others.
It's the parable of the figs or whatever that I read last time.
Yeah.
There's a huge opportunity cost that is unavoidable no matter what you do. You can do the best thing imaginable in your situation, and you're still closing off a bunch of other options. And
it's also just like you are like in a like a terrible epistemic position where you never get to know. You never get to know. And it's like
you're blind, you grasp at a fig, you're grasp at another fig. Well, I got to pick. You'll never know.
Yeah.
Here's how I interpreted those moments in the book. I interpreted them more like in the sense of like obviously the critique of literature at the time. But here's the more interesting point that I found. So oftentimes when he lists logical possibilities of what could happen, he says they're not excluded, on the basis of logical possibility, but then, as a critical reader, you might be incredulous at the fact, of some of these occurrences happening, right?
Yeah.
But what I found interesting was that he still includes a lot of very interesting coincidences throughout the book, which I thought was interesting because that's an interesting reflection of life, right? Because, I mean, you still encounter lots of crazy coincidences and, happenings that almost just seem, there's a certain strangeness to life about that. And I found that interesting where he said, okay, I'm not going to put these all throughout the novel, but I'm going to include some because that is how life is. So,
Adam, can I read you? In my notes, I have page 238. They find the master's horse from earlier randomly. Seems like something the writer would do or would mock you for wanting, but life without coincidences itself would be deeply strange. So I was on the exact same wavelength with you there, where I was like, the strangeness is just like baked in.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It also reminded me of like one thing that, I don't know. It definitely like reminded me of one thing that we had like talked about a while ago, Adam, where we were just talking about like luck in people's lives. And I don't know, you just said you were like, like you're like everyone has just like some shit rolls or whatever, like rolls of the dice or whatever. And it's just like, it'd be kind of weird if you never got a shit roll, and it would be kind of weird if you always got like a shit roll. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know, it's like completely just like it's just random. Like it just is. Yeah. Which definitely, I don't know, which was like another thing that was kind of leading me to relate to Jacques' like almost embrace of the absurd, or like the I mean, he views it in like predestination terms, almost like something is fated to happen. I mean, obviously that's not how like I'm viewing it, but like something akin to that, where it's just like, I like at the end of the day, like it is kind of meaningless,
Yeah, which is like it kind of relates to in the book. It's this is the narrator speaking, but the narrator says that Jacques condemns those who are prudent, but is always prudent himself, right? And what you kind of take away from that is that, okay, Jacques not a true fatalist in the sense that he believes that everything is mapped out ahead of time and that he doesn't have to do anything himself. Like he still has to actively be prudent, but he's not self-assured by his prudence in the same way that he mocks others. Others think that if one is prudent, then one will succeed in their endeavors.
You're destined to succeed.
Exactly. When Jacques knows that's not the case, which is why he still knows that one is more likely to succeed if prudent, which is why he's prudent, right? So,
and whenever things actually, regardless of the outcome, like that's why he kind of always makes those comments like, so this was written above, right? It's kind of like a self-reflection kind of thing. It's like, I admit that I had no, was not accessing the knowledge of like what would come, but I can make decisions based off like what I thought as like a fallible human, and this is how it shaked out. Interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, so definitely agree.
It always reminds me of, I don't know, Adam, you might know like who said this quote or whatever, but he was like, it was like a football quote. It was by like a running back, and he was just like, you've got to just like, you run into the line, and if a gap opens up, then you'll be there to run through it. But if it doesn't open up, it's not going to open up. But you have to be there if the gap opens up to be able to run through it. Yeah. Like it very much reminded me of that kind of mentality where it's just like, okay, if I'm not prudent, then of course I can't succeed because like
you're not being prudent.
But if I am, it's no guarantee of success. Yeah. So it's just, I definitely related to that.
Yeah. So, even some surface level contradictions like that about Jacques' character, like, kind of speak more of his philosophy.
Yeah, they're seeming contradictions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're not real contradictions. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So,
I think there's also it seemed like with respect to that, him being prudent but mocking people who are prudent, it also seemed to me like there's a certain way of striving which is almost effortful in a negative sense, and then there's a way of doing the exact same actions but with just a little bit more of like irony or the sense of absurdity creeping in, where you can do the exact same thing but almost like not necessarily enjoy it more but not suffer as much.
Agreed. Yeah.
You know, and like that was what I got that from Jacques like so much, where it's just like
and there's a psychological element, kind of similar to some of the other works we've read by all of these authors, where there's a psychological element to the philosophical positions the main characters are taking. And you do get the sense that like he gets like some solace in the fact that he is aware of like the limitations of himself, right? Which is why he kind of like takes this lighthearted approach. I mean, it could be anything that happened, like misery could just like have struck. It's like so this was written above, he definitely isn't like suffering at like the injustice of like him working towards something and then not getting it because he never thought it would happen necessarily. So
I'm just laughing because I'm reminded of like even some of like the more absurd moments where he says like it was written above. I mean, recall like the argument that he got into with his master, where his master was commanding him to go downstairs, and he said like I will not, but the hostess comes up and resolves it, saying that okay, I will lead Jacques downstairs, and then Jacques will come up, and then both the master and Jacques will speak no more of it, right?
Yeah.
So as Jacques like being led away by the hostess, he just like calls to the heavens and just like, so it was written above after all that I would go downstairs. Like he like wails it. So
that was an amusing scene also, because like shortly thereafter, like I think the narrator comments like, this poor woman, like the hostess that they left, like thought this is the first time they'd done this, just like figured needlessly and resolved. Hyperbolically.
Well, wasn't it very funny too? Because didn't she basically like take him like a few steps down, but then just immediately turn around and come back up? And
she like embraced heavily.
Yeah, they just embraced. It was very funny. It was very funny. No, I don't know. I love that because honestly, like I do take that to heart, where it's just like chill the fuck out about some shit sometimes. But I both do it, but I honestly also need to do it more often, where it's like, I don't know, because like, I like care a lot about some shit, and then if it doesn't go well, or if I'm like pressed to do, like, I don't know, with like getting ready to move or whatever, I'll definitely find myself like stressed to get something done, and I'm like, I'll just take 2 seconds and be like, dude, chill the fuck out. Like, you're gonna do this either way. Like, why not just take 10% off and actually just like chill and just vibe and enjoy it, like put on a little like, Tyler the Creator in the background or something, just like chill out a little bit. Like, it's gonna be fine or it's not, just chill.
And afterwards you can just remark, so this was written above.
So it's written above. Yeah. I don't know, what did you guys, I don't know I don't even know that I think of anything about the ending necessarily.
The like second to last line is a comment about cuckolding. That was kind of amusing. But yeah, I mean, it was actually a combination of cuckolding and what we were just talking about with like, well, it may or may not be written above.
Like I found the master's story.
Oh, that was a great story
about like his own first love as like I loved that story.
That was an amazing story. Yes, yeah, actually. Yeah. I did write like the treachery there was like twisted to its core.
That was such a good story.
Do you want to tell it, Adam?
Yeah, sure. So this is the one where like the names are gonna get butchered like mad. Yeah, so let's see, where do we start with this one? So his master has been seeing this one girl in the village, okay? And he's got a good friend named Cavalier. How are we gonna say this?
I was thinking of it as Chevalier, but that's pretty stereotypically French. I think it is
Chevalier.
Chevalier, okay,
yeah.
Chevalier. So he's got a friend, Chevalier, and he's like, okay, you must get this girl that you're courting, a wonderful gift. Not only does she think she's getting like one of the best gifts, but like I've been hyping it up. Her family is well aware of the gifts that she'll be getting.
It was like a courting gift, essentially.
Yes, yeah. but at this point,
nearly
like
a proposition.
Yeah, but like the master has no money at this point. So his supposed friend, Chevalier, is like, okay, I know someone that can get us money. Okay, so he takes him to like this shady kind of room that's like in some loft or whatever with like, that's just, something bad's going to go down because there's like this layer of dust on everything. All the chairs, nothing matches. It's completely cluttered, this room. And this older man comes out and is like, okay, I'm unwilling to help this time. Like, I will not participate in what we're going to do here. So for some reason, the master's like unaware of this dialogue. But this guy, Chevalier, convinces like this guy, okay, we need your help. So this older guy begins recruiting some other cronies, including this guy who he initially refused to deal with, but eventually was convinced to, a guy named Merville. So they go to this guy Merville and we're like, okay, we need lots of money like now. So Merville's like, okay, you're in luck. Like, there's this woman who deals like in fine crafts, pretty much of like, gold and silver and certain garments that she'll sell to you, and then you'll go out and sell. So it's like some pyramid scheme, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense whatsoever.
No.
So it's like, okay. So they like buy it off her from like some like enormous sum. And then immediately like certain members of the group start like picking items for themselves. And then are like, oh, okay, like, I'll take like these gold bracelets and I'll put down 4,000 for them. And so, as a result, the master gets like immediate cash and is able to like, buy gifts for like, the woman that he's courting. But these other guys that like said that they would help sell this stuff, like pretty much like sell none of it. Like they sell some of it, but like the rest like ultimately like is unsold. It's kept. It was like kind of just like put into their pockets essentially.
Look the other way.
Yeah.
Sorry, bud. You got to cough it up.
Pretty much like they all pretty much like took gifts for themselves. Like whenever like the items were purchased, they're like, okay, like before even selling anything, they're like, I'll take like this, like this gold cuff. I'll take this fine handkerchief, Yeah, so as a result of that, there was like...
They were like...
Including Le Chevalier.
They would always say like, well, you merely have to sell this item for a bit more to cover the cost or whatever. They just pass it off like crooks.
Yeah. And Jacques in the middle of the story is like, the smells of shady deals a mile away. So it's very obvious to a character like Jacques what's going to happen here.
Exactly. So, of course, like, they can't get the money to this guy Merville. So Merville like pretty much hunts him down and like sues the heck out of him. So after like this occurrence, like the master goes and has like some sort of like brunch or lunch with like this guy like Chevalier.
Yeah, picnic or something.
Something like that. And like this absolute scoundrel is like I was like, I have done something like terrible to a friend. And like the master's like, what? Like, what is it? And he's like, I've been like, you know, sleeping with the woman that, you know, a friend of mine is courting. And he's like, but I do feel terrible. So the master's like, you know, surely if you feel like enough repentance, like, you know, your friend would forgive you. And he's like, and embrace you, and then like, so Chevalier
like,
gets
embrace
up,
me, Jacques.
and embrace me, yeah. So, and he's like, me, are you scoundrel? And then, but
you blackguard.
Blackguard's a great one. I
made a note of that one.
I have to keep that in my lexicon.
Yes,
but so anyway, he's like, okay, but we're gonna get back at this girl together. You know, I should.
Chevalier kind of mentions, he's like, I kind of was, you know, entranced and like kind of fooled and manipulated by her as well. So he kind of like takes partial responsibility, but also is like, you know, she, you know, is also part of like this issue, like underlying.
Yeah,
you know,
but
this whole like, family really.
But like one of the best things though is like,
this is wretched. This is so twisted.
But the master's like, he's like, okay, like my one request actually before like they even like get into this like debaucherous deal, but like the master's like one request is he's like, at least tell me what it was like. He's like, it must have been like really good, right? And like that absolute blackguard Chevalier, it was just like he's like, oh well, if only like the pleasures, like if the pleasure could like outweigh like the duplicity of the act, he's like, it would be well covered. So it was like, so
he basically like painted this picture of him like sneaking into her quarters every night for the past like 6 months or something like that. It was
this entire time the courting is happening.
It was crazy.
The real scoundrel.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like the master like hasn't gotten anything out of this deal except for like obligations and debts.
This is where it gets just like twisted to like an old cedar root.
Yeah. So he's like, okay, well, better than hearing it from me, would you rather do it? Like, do exactly what I've been doing? And like the master was like, pretty much, yeah. So he's like, okay, you're gonna enter into the house at the same time that I enter. Like she puts like these basil leaves on like, you know, the like the window ledge to indicate that like she's ready for it. So he's like, you need to dress like I dress, enter the same way I enter, and like, you know, follow the same cues I follow. So he's like, what you're going to do is you're going to go in there and sleep with her for a few nights. And then we're both going to sneak in. And then like, ultimately we're going to have like a romp with her at the same time. and then she'll wake up like between both of us. So I think the idea was that they were going to like take turns and then she would wake up between both of them.
Like exposed for her foolishness.
Exactly. So it actually works out pretty well for like the first few nights where like the master does sneak in and do that.
None the wiser.
But the blackguard Chevalier, like pretty much like contacts the authorities and her father.
So go ahead. I was like, my jaw was actually just like ajar reading this because he like Le Chevalier contacts the authorities, but he himself like both contacts the authorities but also like alerts the house, it seems, and has crept up. Like he kept like, you know, a key for himself and entered through the street door and basically bursts the door open while they're in the act and catches them red-handed. This was like the depths of duplicity. So he's caught red-handed, like basically just, you know, devaluing their daughter essentially, because it's like a noble family. So, you know, there's like a high toll that the family is charging almost. You get the sense it's like legal to the master to sort of like repay the family's losses or whatever. But it turns out that like, you know, Le Chevalier had gotten like this girl pregnant, and he had like didn't want to support her and be sort of like tied down to that. So he swapped places with the master, and in alerting the authorities, his master then had to like pay the dues for the child rearing, for like the child's life
continually. Like that's what like Jacques and his master end up like after we haven't heard about it for 200 pages. We find out that they were going to the town where the son is.
Yes,
right? Like this bastard son, who's actually the spitting image of Le Chevalier.
Yes. So he had to like raise his like his like
to this day his
son.
Yes, this complete villain.
I did enjoy like the part where like Jacques like speculating like what this young boy could become, and he's just like, because like it's like clear that the boy is going to be trained as some sort of tradesman, and like Jacques like, well, he could become anything. And like the master's like, well, he's like, he could become the next Oliver Cromwell. He's like, or he could even become the guy who held the axe, who killed the king. And clearly the master's like just stirred by this. He's like, that's enough. So like it's just like
the speculation ends here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was like, why couldn't he become the man who held the axe who killed the king?
If he puts his heart to it.
The ending was one of those things where like it was one of those coincidences almost where because they basically are like reaching this town and
where the sun is,
and you don't know that like that's where their journey has been headed, and Le Chevalier just emerges from like one of the buildings, and the master just like charges him and kills him. So sorry. Then the master,
it's like, absolutely absurd because like you don't.
So
I'm sure you guys had the same experience I had, where you're not even sure what just happened because like
I literally thought I had skipped a page. I was like, I was like, what?
Because Jacques was just ordered to go like to like the nearest inn to see if they had any wine, because they were like sitting outside the town, like they kind of like on the outskirts of the town. And they were tired. They wanted to just like sit for a little bit and just like, chill, but they were both out of wine. So his master was like, okay, go check like the nearest household / inn and see if they have any wine. Yeah. And then suddenly like Jacques turned back and like his master's like charging him
with his sword, just
and then he slays him. Yeah.
Yes.
And then he rides away like mad. Then suddenly like Jacques like now in prison appears in front of a judge. Like it's like the whole thing happens within like half a page.
Yeah, it was the very end of the book. Yeah, Jacques is arrested and thrown in jail. But then later, his master is caught and arrested in another town. Like he had fled to like the neighboring town. And eventually, it's not even made clear how, but Jacques escapes his imprisonment and joins a raiding party just to like kind of, do something, I guess. And then they raid the town with the master in it and set him free. So it was like, what? And then, so then they're all kind of like, he and his master and these raiders are now in this random town where they're all free and they're united with like many of these other characters from the story. They're like Deglans, Denis, like the master, like all of these people are just like randomly in this town. It was like, I was like, what? It was like one of the most
almost like, I think it's like within, it's a page 251 is where we find out it was like Le Chevalier who was just like charged and killed. That's like 4 pages from the end.
Dude, it made like no sense. But then like I don't even like, okay, like this is like the last 2 or 3 paragraphs of the book where it was like, okay, a few days afterwards, the old concierge of the chateau died. Jacques secured his place and married Denis, with whom he occupied himself in raising disciples of Zeno and Spinoza, loved by Deglans, cherished by his master and adored by his wife, for thus it was written above. It has been claimed that his master and Deglans fell in love with his wife. I do not know if this is true, but I am sure that at night he used to say to himself, if it is written up above that you will be cuckolded, no matter what you do, you will be. If, however, it is written above that you will not be cuckolded, no matter what they do, you won't be. So sleep, my friend. And he slept. It was like, what?
The end of the novel. That's the very end.
Like the end of the novel is him like fretting that his master's just like hanging his wife essentially. And he's just like, what?
But like it's like wrapped up with this like the narrator himself who's telling us the story this whole time is like, yeah, I'm not really sure what happens after like Le Chevalier got murdered by the master. He like speculates on possible like versions he's heard, and then like the last word is just, like as you said, it's like the narrator thought that what Jacques might have been thinking according to one of the possible endings of the story. It's like
it was like, if I'm destined to be a cuckold, then I will
be. That's it. And he slept at the very end.
I guess it just rings true to like the non-narrativity almost of all of like the kind of, you know, chapters in Jacques' life where he was just sort of like, there was no character building, there was no character arc. It was just like these almost like episodes of his life in a sense, where he was just like, let me tell you the story of this time, you know, like I was deflowered in the barn, or you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know, he like, it just kind of ends how it started, with like a very vagabondish life where he's just like, I don't know. It definitely struck me as a non-arcing story. It's just
it's like an anti-novel in that way.
Yeah.
You start in medias res and you end kind of like sort of in medias res.
Yeah.
It's really, you know, you don't even really end. The narrator's like, yeah, I'm not really sure how it ends. It's like, I've told you everything I know.
Yeah. In terms of plot, you could probably argue like the climax was in the final 4 pages. I mean,
251. I think that's where it is.
Because it was a shocking change of pace, when like the master charges like his mortal enemy.
It's absurd. It was so absurd, actually.
Diderot's so funny though. Like he would be such an interesting person to hang out with. Like
oh my god, he would be such a like he would be like one of the perfect people to have like drinks at the bar with.
Because I mean, it's obvious that he's a polymath, that he's a great writer, and that he's just so funny too.
Yeah,
like so.
You villain,
you blackguard. Yeah, no. Very funny. Structure could be difficult to get back into if you pause. But overall, like the comedy is just it's pretty fantastic.
I would say that this is possibly sort of like if I were spending a week at the beach on like a family vacation, I can imagine no book that would be better to read in that circumstance than this.
I actually so agree.
Yes.
Yeah, this is actually a perfect vacation sort of read.
Yes.
Yes. It's a novella, short. It's funny.
I can imagine simply nothing better actually than this.
You're actually so right on that because whenever I did have long stretches to read it, it was like a 10 out of 10. It was hard though to read it in short bursts.
Yeah.
Just given the nature of the writing style.
Yeah.
This was meant for like an aristocracy that had no labor to engage in. So
true. It is true. Yeah. I don't know if honestly if you're listening now, what we've discussed, you may think to yourself like, oh, okay, it's not worth reading. Like I've already like heard a lengthy discussion of it. Like no, you have to read this. In my opinion, it's so good.
This is I think I've talked myself into an easy 9 with this book. I mean, this book is great.
Yes.
So
yes,
it's great, but I'm going to stick with my 8, and I can either be labeled a fool for that or be vindicated in time.
Well, you're so miserly with grading anything high.
It's a bell curve. What can I say?
Like an 8, like
8's a good work.
No, an 8 is a normal man's 10. Is a non-miser's 10 for you. You're so stingy about praise. You're a praise grubber.
Well, I think Giffin, you gave a 9 to Notes from Underground, right?
Even that wasn't a 10. You wouldn't even give that a 10.
Oh, you can't go any higher than a 10. That's claiming some perfection that man is not capable of.
Well, there could be many 10s.
Yeah,
I mean, we're only reading great novels here. We're not reading like just like, hop on pop. So
That was a childhood 10 if there ever was one.
Giffin, what's a 10? I want to know. Like a book, because you've read a lot of books. What would you give the best book you have read? I'm not going to hold you to it, but I'm saying that, like, you know,
to be frank, I think
it's denial of experience reaches a 10.
It's the only thing that really resonated with me, just up and down. I don't know. I think I like am just like by nature like opposed to like giving things 10s. Like I'll rate something in the 9s for sure. That's been said tonight. I mean, like it's like a 10.0. Like it doesn't go any higher than that. It's like a 9.9 is in the 9th, and then 10.0 is a very strong. Do you love me,
Giffin? I wouldn't say I hate you.
Yeah,
you could say I pity you.
Okay, this is all derived from me giving Jacques the Fatalist an 8.
Giffin, I am interested though. What is the best book? If you said like something that had to be like a, you know, it's over a 9, something you've read over a 9.
I would give Notes from Underground over a 9. I really enjoy.
You would?
It.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would probably be something that's like, you know, in the highest tier. So if there's a Mount Rushmore of like my, you know, favorite kind of novel or novella forms, that's on there.
Fair.
There isn't a Mount Rushmore, but if there had to be one,
gun to my head, and that's the only situation in which there would be one.
If I had to say something positive,
I would deign to put in an 8. A mere 9.9.
I've got lots of 9s and 10s because it's just like a 9 and 10 for me is like a work where, you know, maybe a 9 like this book, I had like minor criticisms. Like I said, 200 of the 250 pages I adored, and 50 pages in the middle, it's like, you know, I take it or leave it with a 5 in that area. You know what I mean? The rest of 10
5 is pretty harsh. I was surprised by that. I think that's lower than what I gave it.
I struggled through that section. Maybe I was just super busy that week too, so it was just a nonstop pick up, put down, pick up, put down. But it was like,
that's true. The structure can really amplify that as well.
But it got to the point where I was like looking up words on my phone, you know, certain French terms and stuff like that. I would be there for half an hour, and I'd gotten through like 4 to 5 pages.
Yeah, that's miserable.
It was just like that section alone where I was just like, really, it was a slog. But so like a 9 for me is like, the book was amazing, minor imperfections. You know, a 10 is like, okay, I'm not saying it's like the best book of all time, but I am saying that for what it is, I loved it so much that I like the imperfections and all. Right, like the little kind of quirks and idiosyncrasies of the book, like that's what makes it even better. Like, I don't know what I would give a 10. I'm sure I do have 10s.
Surely, he says, after minutes of mockery on me.
No, but I know I do have 10s though. Like I'd have to think about it. Like,
Hop on Pop's the only thing coming to the places we'll go.
Yeah.
Truly a work of unbridled genius. I wonder if this was honestly idiosyncratic to not only me, but me at the time. But I would definitely say like a book that, I mean, first of all, I'm prepared to give both this book and Notes from Underground a 10. Not in the sense that they're the perfect book, but in the sense that like, what more do I want? How greedy could I be? You know what I mean? Like how much more could I want?
I'm willing to be greedy.
No, you're
I can imagine a universe in which Notes from Underground could have been slightly improved. So it does not get the 10.
Meanwhile, like your B+ English paper's coming back.
An outrage.
This work of genius from Dostoevsky could have been better. The Razor's Edge by M. Somerset. I don't know if it's pronounced Magam or Maham or
M. Night Shyamalan.
not quite.
Okay.
I honestly, if I reread that today, I'm not sure if I would say that. It was maybe kind of the perfect book for me to read at the time. it's again like I think it's a novella that is sort of like fictional asterisks, where it was like based on supposedly people he knew in real life or whatever. But I really enjoyed that read. I think it's kind of like it's best summarized as like an exploration of different types of lives that one could lead. It's I don't know. It's a good book. I think those three might be like 10s for me, in the sense that again they're not perfect, but what more could I ask for?
Fair.
I'd honestly have to give a lot of thought to a 10. I shouldn't have mocked, because I can name a lot of
He can't name a single one.
I can't.
No,
it's actually so true. I take back everything. I can't name a single 10 because I.
Glorious. I'm vindicated.
The dark side is one.
Just like hop on, pop and go, dog, go, swirling it out of his mind. He's like, my God, he's right. Vindicated again.
The Vindicator. Oh
no, it's a tough question. Like,
yeah,
but no, this is good. This is a really good read.
Yeah,
because like, was there any work that was like, truly more outstanding than like what we just read? I'm trying to give it some thought, because
are we including papers in this, or does it have to be books?
No,
okay. No. It has to be a book.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's Notes from Undergrad. That's like the easiest one to pull from. We read it recently. I really enjoyed it. When I first read it and rereading it. So, yeah, definitely better than this, just for me. I'd probably again Notes from Undergrad in the 9s, Jacques the Fatalist in the 8s. Kind of where I'm at.
I'll say this. Certainly, I'm not saying it's better than Jacques the Fatalist. But I would say it could be. I'd have to reread it, but 1,000 Splendid Suns.
You recommended that to me before.
Yeah, I think that may be one of my favorite books of all time.
Is that one that we should do in this series?
Is that a novel or a novella? I thought it was a little bit longer.
It's more of a novel. I mean, I don't think it's much longer than Jacques the Fatalist. This was 250 pages, so this might be like 300 to 400 or something like that. But same author as like the Kite Runner, so I'm sure you've heard of that one. But yeah, 1,000 Splendid Suns was definitely a 9 or a 10. So, but maybe closer to a 10, to be honest. That one was crazy. But
oh shit, I have another 10, and this is a true 10 for me in the sense that I actually can't imagine how this would be perfected or increased. The Story of God by Chris Matheson. That is one of my favorite books of all time. I actually said that we should do that as an episode one time.
I'd be down to read a 10.
It is so good in the sense that it's I won't spoil anything, but it's basically like Chris Matheson. It's like a story of the Bible from God's perspective, but it's
biblical comedy about love and hate.
It's actually like it's so good. It's so good, actually.
I'd be so down to read it.
Yeah. First of all, 100% down to read that. That sounds perfect. But also, it reminded me of another thing that I liked about Jacques the Fatalist. It was one of the moments where, like, for some reason, the master was describing to Jacques like Dante's like Divine Comedy. It's like he was describing like the Inferno and describing like what it's about, like describe the layers of hell, and then Jacques like, it's an odd thing to write a comedy about. it's like what the hell?
Yeah.
But I'd be totally down.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's discuss what we're gonna do next, but let's end the episode. I don't know if this will be a 1-parter or a 2-parter, but okay. If you haven't, just actually buy the book. It's like $8 online. It is. I can't imagine regretting this read. It's too good. Buy it, read it.
I'll buy it tonight. Buy it tonight. No, I'm serious, because I need to buy some books anyway.
I was referring to Jacques the Fatalist, but
Adam's like, I guess I will read it after all.
I forgot. That's so
Having bullshitted his way through that. Making up the story that somehow aligns perfectly.
He's hearing Jordan say a 10. He's like, damn, I should have read this book.
That's so funny.
7 weeks into reading it, it's like, damn.
Oh my god!
I forgot. Whenever you stop recording that damn Zoom, the session has stopped recording. It needs to come up.
Yes, of course. No, all right. But yeah, I hope people enjoyed the episode. Tune in next time. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of Plato's Cave. I always enjoy discussing topics with these two guys. So if you want to support the show in any way, you can do so simply by sharing it. I'm hoping to get this show out to more people. And so if you want to share it on Twitter or social media, that would really help me. You can also rate it on Apple Podcasts, like this video if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe via Apple Podcasts or an RSS feed. You can also discuss it on your own show and link back to my website, or you can connect me with recommended guests or topics to cover. You can get in contact with me at platoscavepodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter at Jordan_C_Myers, and I now have a website for my philosophy endeavors at jordanmyers.org. If you want to know a little bit more about me and my fellow co-hosts, as I said in the introduction, I'm a master's student in philosophy at the University of Houston. I did my undergrad at the University of Pittsburgh, where I studied mechanical engineering and philosophy, and now that I'm back at school, I'm hoping to more closely study moral responsibility, free will, ethics, epistemology, and moral psychology. Those are topics that I was introduced to and got really interested in my undergrad work. So Adam and Giffin accompanied me on this show, and Adam is one of my oldest friends. We actually met in kindergarten, and we've been interested in philosophical topics for as long as we can remember, and in a lot of ways it's been the basis of our friendship. Adam studied chemistry and biology at Cornell, and he is currently working at a law firm. And he's especially interested in moral responsibility as well, but also law, religion, and free will. Giffin is also one of my oldest friends, and we've been friends since elementary school as well. Giffin studied biology and economics at RPI, and now he works in human health research. He believes that there's very interesting overlap between both of his fields of study and philosophy, and he's particularly interested in exploring political philosophy. So this series was right up his alley. And with all of that information, again, I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you get in contact with me or follow my work in any way that you deem reasonable to do. So with that, thank you for listening.